I wonder if you've ever had an MRI. If you have, then you'll know what it's like. It feels like you're being posted through a robotic kind of letterbox and some kind of generic music playing in the background while you're hearing these overwhelmingly odd noises that don't sound great at all. It sounds like a car that's broken down. And it's not really pleasant, and you're told you've got to stay still. It's not unpleasant, nothing bad happens to you, but it's just the being constrained, right? It's challenging to be in that kind of posture for a long period of time. Eventually, after I had my MRI, I met with the consultant, and he looked at the results and he said, well, your brain is unremarkable. Now, I knew what he meant in that moment. I think what he meant was, by an unremarkable brain, there's no scarring, there's no shrinking, there's no tumors, there's no abnormalities. Completely normal, completely ordinary, completely unremarkable. And that's good news, and that's what you really want. But I couldn't help but feel deep down slightly offended that my brain was unremarkable. I want to have a remarkable brain. And today we're exploring something wonderfully upside down in the kingdom of God, what it means to be remarkably unremarkable. My name is Neil O'Boyle, and this is the Waypoint, learning the way and living with purpose. We don't like the word unremarkable, do we? Nobody wants to be unremarkable. We spend our lives running away from it, if we're honest. The world preaches an entire gospel of be impressive, be the best, stand out, be exceptional, right? Go viral, make your mark, build your brand, do something noteworthy, live your life so that you matter and people can see that you are really quite something. And even in the church, we're baptized into this culture of total obsession to being remarkable. Leadership pipelines, platform buildings, influence, growing your impact, raising your profile, standing out, being the person that people talk about, the person that people look up to, the person that people want to be like. And yet Jesus says the exact opposite. He pushes for a different way of standing out, a different way of living, a different way of what it means to be remarkable. See, while the world says be remarkable, Jesus says be faithful. He says be humble, be the servant of all. So yes, my MRI didn't just poke my brain. It poked my ego. And for years as the CEO of British Youth for Christ, I would walk into rooms where leadership mattered. Meetings with church leaders, Christian conferences, strategic gatherings, and I would meet some of the most well-known people in the Christian community that you would have heard of. And here's what I discovered. Before anyone knew who I was completely unremarkable to them. People would just look past me. I'd be the person just stood with a drink in my hand and no one talking to me at all, just looking around wondering when this meeting's going to start so that I don't have to feel so awkward. And people would just look completely through me. In some ways, I was, or at least I felt, ignored at most of the time in meetings like that. And I remember on one occasion, I was talking to someone that I knew, and we were mid-flow conversation, and someone else who was really quite well known in the Christian community just kind of cut through the conversation and stood physically in front of me. So I was now looking at this other individual's back while this new individual was talking to the person that I was talking to. Completely knew I was there, but I didn't matter in that moment. And it was only when the person that I had been talking to stopped the individual mid-flow and said, "Can I introduce you to Neil?" And Neil is the CEO of British Youth for Christ. At which point that person became interested in me, not because of who I am, but because of my title. And, you know, there are moments when we're so obsessed with personalities and positions that we lose the entire understanding of what Jesus has called us to do, to love the least, the lost, the broken. And it's all about the who's and the haves rather than the have-nots in moments like that. And I know I'm being tough on those kind of environments, and much of that reflects me as an introvert than it does anything else. But it's in those environments where actually it's how people make you feel, right, that matters. And if you're made to feel like a nobody, that you don't have value, then there's something not quite right about that. And I want to live my life in a way where actually I do make people feel valued, where I do make people stand out, where I do make people feel important and special, when people meet with me, they walk away with a bit of a glow, not because I'm amazing, not because I have the ability to win others over, but because I'm interested in them, because they matter to me, because I really value who they are, and I see more for them, and because of their title or what they've done, but actually because they're human beings who have a life that really, really matters. So here's the uncomfortable truth. I was the same person before any of the people in that room got to know me, right? Nothing about me had changed, only their perception of my importance based on title. And it made me ask some questions. Why does a title make me more noticeable? Why should leadership make me more valuable? And why do people treat you differently once they know what you do? And more importantly, why on earth would I want my identity to be built on that? And that is the most important question. Why would I want my identity to be built on that? And I'm no longer the national director or the CEO of British Youth for Christ, and I'm more than okay with that. And I know that I'll walk into rooms and people will say, who are you? And they won't be interested at all because I don't have this high-ranking role anymore. And I'm more than fine with that, because I'm never really going to matter to those individuals in the first place if that's what it depends on. I'm not interested in impressing people who are unimpressed with me until they know what job I have or did have. I don't want to win people with personality. I want to please Jesus. I want to be kind. I want to be present. I want to be faithful, even if that faithfulness is completely unremarkable in the eyes and the views of other people. And I would suggest that that is what we're all called to do. Here's the great reversal of the kingdom. Jesus chose ordinary people. We hear that, we know that, but do we really believe it? But that is what he did. Unimpressive people, overlooked people, background characters, uneducated. He was born in obscurity, worked a normal job for 30 years. We don't put too much emphasis on that. We look at the last 3 years of his ministry, not what was going on before that, not how the world saw him before that. And he selected fishermen, not philosophers, those tax collectors, not influencers with, 1 million followers, women with no social status. And don't overlook that. We can so lose sight of what that meant. The impact of Jesus choosing women 2,000 years ago, engaging with women, then being part of his group, is of huge significance. Because he valued, and he said, actually, women are of equal importance to men. They matter. And that was such a mic drop moment, if there were mics 2,000 years ago, because of the significance that Jesus was playing on the equality of women at the time. He chose shepherds, immigrants, widows, beggars. God seems almost allergic to recruiting the impressive. And yet we put so much emphasis on personalities over character. Paul puts it this way, doesn't he? He says, God chose the foolish things to shame the wise and the weak things to shame the strong. 1 Corinthians 1:27. Because when God uses unremarkable people, his glory becomes unmistakable. Does that mean that God doesn't want to use the gifted, the able, the capable, the educated, the well-positioned? Of course he does. But it's about the heart, right? Because when God uses an open and willing heart, somewhat unremarkable, his glory becomes unmistakable. The kingdom is built on invisible faithfulness, not public impressiveness. And again, that's what really matters. And that's why we're all shocked. For some people, their faith collapses when a well-known Christian leader is called out for a public disgrace, right? Because we've put so much weight and emphasis on those individuals, but actually we got it so wrong. It's the faithful followers of Jesus, day in, day out, that really stands out. The ones who really, really, truly know Jesus and live a life of humility and kindness and compassion, and are the same people in private as they are in public. They're the ones that we want to watch, because they are the ones who are standing out in the viewpoint of the God, the creator of the universe. Jesus flipped greatness upside down. The last will be first. Whoever wants to be great must become the servant. He made himself nothing. Greatness in the kingdom isn't about being seen, it's about being surrendered. And that so matters, right? You know, you see that verse, Jesus says, pick up your cross and deny yourself, surrender everything to me. It's not about leading crowds, it's about following Christ. And if your identity is built on impressing people, you'll spend your whole life exhausted. You'll spend your whole life dissatisfied because people are remarkably difficult to impress. But Jesus, he seems wonderfully impressed by humility, by obscurity, by kindness, by quiet obedience, the unseen places, the unnoticed sacrifices, the unremarkable faithfulness of ordinary people. That's what really grabs Jesus. But I wonder, I heard a story very recently of a Youth for Christ worker who had been leading a session with young people, or a number of sessions with young people, talking about why they matter and why they matter to God. And one of the young people said, yep, no, I hear that. I now understand what you mean by why I matter to God, but that would only matter if God mattered to me. And there's something about that just stopped me in my tracks, because there was real brute honesty there, right? That person wasn't a follower of Jesus, but I wonder whether actually we have our priorities mixed up at times, where we're actually, we know Jesus is impressed by our humility, etc. But actually, am I really seeking to impress Jesus, or am I really wanting to impress the crowds, the other people out there, the people who make me feel special and significant? Who am I living to ultimately please? And here's where we need to really be pressing into on a continual basis. What does it mean to deny myself, to follow Jesus? See, that MRI called my brain unremarkable, but I've realized unremarkable is not an insult, it's an invitation, right? We are called to be remarkably unremarkable people. An invitation to step off the treadmill of impressiveness, to resist the addiction to visibility, to stop chasing applause, to embrace a life that is measured not by impact, but by intimacy with Jesus. And the Christian life isn't about becoming extraordinary, it's about becoming faithful. The world celebrates spectacular. Jesus celebrates the surrendered. And some of the greatest kingdom work is being done right now by people no one will ever quote. There'll be no film about them. There'll be no books written about them. There won't be a podcast that mentions them. But they faithfully followed Jesus. And when all is said and done, what matters most to us? That we live the life here on earth where we got our followers, we got our moments of fame, we got our applause, we got the recognition, we got the invitations. Or do we want to live a life when all is said and done, we hear those words of Jesus when we enter the throne room, well done, good and faithful servant. Right? Which really, truly matters the most to us in those moments. So how do we live remarkably unremarkable lives? Well, number one, firstly, we stop measuring value by visibility. Your unseen obedience is seen by God. That is what matters the most. Number two, choose kindness over charisma. People forget impressive people. They don't forget kind people. And you've heard it said 5 years from now, people won't remember what we said to them. They'll remember how we made them feel. Number three, practice smallness. Say no. Slow down. Serve quietly. Be unseen. And do what you think Jesus would ask you to do. Number four, follow more than you lead. Leadership is always a byproduct of discipleship, never the goal. And we live in a society which really promotes leadership, but I wonder just how biblical leadership really is. Yes, people are called to lead. Yes, of course they are. But really, we are called above all else to follow. And so why do we put so much emphasis and aspiration on leading rather than following, because that is what Jesus asks us to do ultimately. Number 5, celebrate limits. Your humanity is not a flaw. It is part of your calling. Your humanity is not a flaw. It's part of your calling. So my MRI called my brain unremarkable, and if you've had an MRI, I hope the same is said for you. And maybe in a spiritual sense, that's the best diagnosis I could ever receive. It's not just the best physical diagnosis, but also potentially the best spiritual diagnosis. Because I don't want to be impressive. I want to be faithful. I want to love well. I want to follow Jesus more than I want anyone to follow me. When all is said and done, and I know I keep saying that, but when all is said and done, it is the words of Jesus that I want to hear above all else. I want to know that he noticed me because of the way I stood out by living a remarkably unremarkable life. And if this kingdom of God is built on ordinary people doing ordinary things with extraordinary love, then being unremarkable might just be the most remarkable thing above all else. I'm Neil O'Boyle, and this has been Waypoint, learning the way and living with purpose. And until next time, may you find joy in ordinary days, freedom in unseen obedience, and peace in being wonderfully, beautifully, remarkably unremarkable. And God bless you in all that you do. See you next time.